Welcome to Talk is Jericho. It's the pot of thunder and roll, and we're all about the rock and roll today with a guest who's making his 5th appearance on Talk is Jericho. Give him the green jacket and give it up for the star child himself, Paul Stanley. And you know what we're talking about. Kiss, of course, 50 years of Kiss. I know you want to know what the avatars are all about, the ones the band introduced at their final farewell show in December 2023 at Madison Square Garden. Wait till you hear Paul's explanation. Some huge things on the horizon for Kiss, so mark your calendar for 2027. Maybe look at some Vegas hotel rooms. You'll hear all about that. We also talk about Kiss's final tour, the set list, the lack of special guest appearances, and whether or not Kiss, and more specifically Paul, are really done performing live. We talk about Paul's vocal range, his onstage persona, and the musician who most influenced him. We get into Zeppelin, the Stones, Rush. We talk about Kiss taking off the makeup in the 80s and putting it back on in the 90s and shooting the classic Dress to Kill album cover. So much more. Great conversation with the 5th-timer, Paul Stanley, right here on Talk is Jericho. So many killer stories, and it starts right here, right now. Ah, yeah. All right, the return of Paul Stanley to Talk is Jericho.
Very awesome.
I went and counted. This is your 5th appearance.
Is it really?
It is, yeah.
Wow.
If this is like Saturday Night Live, you get the green jacket.
Yeah, bring it on.
So much to discuss here, and this is great because I was contacted by your people, contacted my people, and said Paul just wants to discuss Kiss and all the great things that are happening and have happened. But basically, it's been a year and change since your last live performance on stage. How does it feel going a year without doing the show, and how have you been continuing on?
It's weird. It's weird because being home isn't anything different.
Mm-hmm.
Not leaving is what's different.
Right.
So part of it is, that's when I'm not on tour, I'm home.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that you're not going back out is something you got to wrap your head around. There's so many great things going on with Kiss, but as a live rock band, I see footage and I go, wow, that's great. And we're not doing it again.
Mm-hmm.
So I see footage from the Garden, from Madison Square Garden. And actually the anniversary, the year I was in New York, December 1st and 2nd, and passing the Garden and thinking, it's like a lifetime ago. So much happens. But yeah, it's kind of like looking behind you and seeing where you've been, but the street only goes this way. There's no turning back.
No U-turns. How was that for you? Because the end of the road tour, and we talked about this, it started in 19. Of course, you get 2 years on hold because of the pandemic. And then that's 2 years of you guys getting older and then finally finishing it up. How was that for you, that last, let's say, 10 gigs, 12 gigs, knowing that one closer to the end?
I think it was, I keep saying weird. It's one thing to be on the end of the road tour and it's going to end in a year. But when you suddenly go, wait a minute, it's almost over. That's pretty daunting. And then I got so sick. Literally, I thought, do I die in this hotel? I was really, really, really sick, and we canceled Toronto and some other shows.
Right towards the end.
Yeah, and it was terrible because people wanted us to reschedule, but the tour was going to end. We couldn't do the Garden, and then now we're going to go back and
Poughkeepsie.
Yeah. So it was it was a stark reality to go, wow, we are really coming to the end of it. And but I have to say, man, the band was on fire. The band was doing what the band should do on a final tour, like cross the T's, dot the I's, and kick everybody in the ass. I think that people who love the band had great justification for loving the band, and people who didn't like the band wound up loving the band. So it was all good.
But, and the fanfare behind that last gig with, you're at the New York Stock Exchange and, it was really kind of a cool, like almost like Kiss Day in New York City in a lot of ways, or maybe it actually was Kiss Day. I don't know, but either way, it was so much emphasis on this, New York band, New York, legends finishing up in the city they started.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing to see cabs with us on the sides of them and to go to the top of the Empire State Building again, but not as high as we had gone for that poster. Yeah, it was. It really was a great way to finish things up. The two garden shows, we could have done more garden shows, but they weren't available. So it was great, and I felt great about it. I felt really, really good, but it was sobering. It's really interesting that outside my dressing room was a photo of Elvis playing the Garden in 71 or 72, and I drove people in my cab
To see that show. Yeah.
So it was heady stuff to do it. And when we were on stage, I could remember out there where my mom and dad sat and where Gene's mom was, and so it was big stuff.
Was it surreal for you? I mean, I just imagine, after I have my last match, which will probably be sooner than later, obviously, taking off the boots for the last time, for example. How was that for you? I mean, I know sometimes you don't look too much in the past, but taking off the makeup for the probably last time, or taking off the costume for the last time.
Well, I could always put it on, get my jollies putting on my costume.
Right.
Not to get like philosophical, but what I've seen over the years is life is really a one-way street, and it keeps getting narrower. And, part of getting older and part of moving forward is leaving some things behind. You don't get to take everything with you. What you get to take are the memories and the accomplishments. I'm sure if you asked Michael Jordan, you'd hear the same thing. Do you miss it? Sure, of course you miss that connection and the adrenaline with an audience and the love and the reciprocity. But at some point, you have to let it go.
I think a lot of people too might not even understand or might not think about the fact that with Kiss, like you think, well, the Stones are still playing and you're 10 years younger than Mick, but Mick's not wearing the battle gear. Was that getting harder and harder to, I mean, how much does it weigh? 30, 40?
Yeah.
Carrying
30,
that around?
40 pounds. Look, we've always been, except when we took it off, we've always been Kiss as people think of us. And that's part of the identity and part of the persona of the band. So we couldn't do this forever any more than Muhammad Ali could fight, or Michael Jordan could keep playing. We were and are athletes as much as we are a band. And at some point you realize either it's getting a lot harder or it's going to get a lot harder. And do you want to be there when you get in the ring with somebody and somebody who's nowhere near your ability knocks you down on the canvas, So it was more a intellectual decision. It's time to stop in the same way that an athlete stops, much more than a musician, because can I still play? Of course I can, Can I still play Detroit Rock City? Can I still play Love Gun? And sure, but running around in that outfit and doing what I was doing, that's a lot of work.
Well, one of the things that everyone was talking about afterwards when the show ended was the way you guys ended the show with this kind of a trailer for the avatars coming out. And, I think a lot of people don't quite understand, and we can talk about this, but I did go see the ABBA show in London with the avatars, and it's mind-blowing. Like, it really is a full-on, I don't want to say a Disney type of show, but it's something you would see in that realm of it kind of blows your mind with the technology available. So let's talk about the avatars, because you end the show with the avatars. I think a lot of people were a little confused, and a lot of people are looking very excited about it. So yeah, let's discuss that.
It was a double-edged sword. Do you put something out there that in some ways doesn't even resemble what you're going to do, but lets people know that there's something coming after this. And that's what we did. Anybody who thought that that's what we're going to wind up with, it was really in such a developmental stage and so early on. There really was talk back and forth. Do we do this? Do we put something out there that really isn't reflective of what we're going to do, but shows that we're moving forward? So that's really what it was. But what we're going to have is mind-boggling. Even since the ABBA show, by the time the ABBA show started, technology had moved that much further, and that show was great. I mean, it's when you see people really interacting and responding to them, and they're not holograms, and they're not anything that technically most of us understand, but to see people just enjoying the hell out of it and being a part of it. The last thing we're going to do is replicate a concert. I don't want anybody to go, boy, that really looks like a Marshall amplifier. That's not what we're doing. We're creating something really immersive. And whether you like Kiss or don't like Kiss, it goes so far beyond that. It's dazzling, and it's sensory overload for everybody. So we couldn't have better people involved. You know, when you have ILM, George Lucas's people,
Right,
and all these people involved, it's going to be great. I have to say that anybody who's expecting something like what some people have tried in the last decade, I mean, if we were doing that, we wouldn't do anything.
right.
There's no reason for us to do anything except if we believe in it. Money's great. My rent's paid.
I think what you might be referring to, another show that I saw was the Dio hologram, which is a little weird because it's Dio, but it's not. It's kind of a computer guy. And you mentioned you don't want to do, a stimulated concert. This is going to be more of an actual show adventure.
Totally, and it's immersive, and you feel it, and whether it's temperature changes or vibrations or everything, it's just going to be something pretty staggering. But once we stop touring, Kiss becomes more, and always has been. But once we stop touring, Kiss is that much more than a band.
Right.
We're whatever we decide Kiss is. So I think the idea of working with people who are outside of our perspective or idea of what we are, especially the people we're working with, it's like, tell us, show us. And there's just amazing things to be done.
When is the approximate release date, shall we say?
2027.
Is it going to be kind
Vegas.
of okay? Yeah. You're reading my mind.
Yeah.
So you're kind of looking at it as being almost a residency type of a show, like Circus Lay, or
unlike anything that someone might compare it to, this isn't something that can play Vegas for a month and then move to Topeka, Kansas. It's you build the structure, you build the arena that it's in specifically for that. So that's what's happening. That's what's in the works. You can't install this. It's not a projector and a screen.
Yeah. So it's something where it has to be a brick and mortar, almost the Kiss Arena sort of thing.
Like in some ways like the ABBA show, that they had to build. They had to build around the event.
I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a bombastic campaign when that starts. And it's interesting. Speaking of Vegas, I just saw the Eagles at the Sphere a couple of weeks ago, and I saw U2 last year there. And I was thinking, man, Kiss is tailor-made for this Sphere experience. I don't know if you've been there or not. But
yeah.
Just seeing that, were you thinking like, oh my gosh, we could do so much stuff with this?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about the Sphere, only because in the 60s or so, there was a thing called Laserium. And it was basically like a big laser show, and they'd be blasting Pink Floyd or Zeppelin or something like that.
Like laser Pink Floyd sort of thing. Yeah.
So with the Sphere, with all respect to everybody who's played there, most of the time you're not looking at the band.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at the screen.
Right.
So do you really need the band?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my question about it. Yeah, if we had done it or were going to do it, you'd be watching us, So yeah, it's a great venue, but it's not about the people playing.
Right.
It's about the person who puts together the show, and the show isn't on stage. The show is on the screens.
Yeah, the show is the Sphere itself.
Yeah.
And you're right, because that's exactly what I was saying. You have to be a pretty great rock and roll band to even go in there, because nobody is watching the band themselves. So if you're not a good band, then the whole thing falls in the show.
Well, you're the soundtrack
right.
for somebody's creative vision that they're putting on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's interpreting the music visually, and you're playing the music, and they're showing what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so in that way, I think bands aren't necessarily necessary at the Sphere. The Sphere is what it's all about.
Last question about the Garden show, your last show. You did 2 in a row. Was there any thoughts about maybe playing some different songs each night and making it both different types of experiences?
No.
Okay.
It's always been an issue with some of the real diehards that, you played the same songs a week ago. Well, you didn't have to be at that show a week ago in this show. The people who are there tonight didn't see last week.
Mm-hmm.
And what we were always trying to do was the best set list we could. And to please a handful, although I love them and feel great gratitude towards them, the idea of changing the set list for a handful of people who are looking at YouTube videos or who are just reading set lists, better yet, talk to the people in Detroit and then talk to the people in Vancouver and talk to the people. None of them are going to say, yeah, they played the same songs, because they weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
So no, we're not that kind of band. And there are bands that do that.
Sure.
But what we have always been about was coordinating the effects and the timing of building the show. Our show was never about a group of songs. It was about pacing, how you come out and start a show, how you take it down, how you build it up. So no, there was never any thought, hey, let's do a completely different set. Why? What if it doesn't work? What if people don't like it as much? Yeah, it's like, okay, let's polish a diamond, but you know what now? Let's throw it out.
Yeah. Was there ever any thought about having any guests on that last show? Because a lot of, super hardcore Kiss fans were like, why was there no tribute to the other band members over the years, the historical, guys that have been around?
To be somewhat diplomatic, there were people who made unrealistic demands of what they required, and it's not about that. It wasn't, for example, a celebration of the beginning of the band. It was a celebration of 50 years of a band, as opposed to a tribute to the start. So as far as, Ace and Peter, they weren't there for many reasons. And I've said it 100 times, and I'll say it another 100 times. We couldn't be here today without what those guys did. And we couldn't be here today with them. So...
And I was even more just wondering about like Eric Carr or Bruce or Mark St. John or whatever it may be.
What are you going to do? I think the best way to honor everyone is to be the best we can be. What are we going to have videos up on the screen, or draped photos? The fact that we were there. We're there because of everybody who participated, some more than others, but the tribute to everyone is us existing.
Kiss as the entity as a whole.
Totally.
Yeah. Let's talk about the legacy of Kiss. And once again, here we are a year after the final show. Still one of the biggest bands in the world, always will be. I mean, we just watched a video earlier, you and I, of the Beatles with the overplaying Ringo Starr for Yesterday. Beatles last forever. I mean, Stones are still together, but 5-10 years from now, they won't be. I mean, that's pretty freaking cool, man. I mean, and how do you feel about the legacy of the band that you started?
I think the legacy is only going to grow. I think it's only going to get bigger. You know, the Stones are an interesting one. At some point, what's it going to be? The Stone? You know, I'm going to see the Rolling Stone. You know, they have survived, you know, more decades than us, certainly, and are an institution. People go to see them because it's the Stones.
It's an event, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that over time, we'll only get bigger because you become more powerful the longer you exist. When we were doing the End of the Road tour, I think we became, you know, almost superheroes because we were timeless and we didn't change that greatly. People would come to see us and go, wow, they look like they did 40 years ago. You didn't get that close to us. But yeah, I think Kiss is timeless, and that Kiss will just transcend everything it's been.
Have you ever met Mick or Keith over the years?
Yes.
Did they know about Kiss?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you know, those guys are legends.
Yeah.
Nothing but respect. I don't care how old I get or how successful. I'm a fanboy. I'm a guy who is who I am because of my love for rock and roll and for other people. My respect and admiration, you know, has been the core of inspiration.
We talked about the Zeppelin documentary that just came out, and I know you're a big Jimmy Page fan. You had the chance to meet him and become friends with him. That must be kind of cool. Like you mentioned, you're still a fan at heart, but here's two legends, but you're still like, yeah, but if it wasn't for Jimmy, maybe there wouldn't be a Paul.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I think that's great. I think to be able to say honestly, I wouldn't be here without you. You're the reason I do what I do. And that's wonderful. I mean, to have a life where you get to incorporate things that were important to you at different times in your life in a different way. And I have nothing but admiration, respect, and continue to be inspired by Zeppelin and Jimmy in particular. You know, fantastic guy, totally on top of what he's done and why, and very respectable and articulate, and you know, hasn't transcended or become something that's a cartoon or a parody, you know. So yeah, I mean, Zeppelin's at my very core, and you know, to have Jimmy at our shows doesn't get better than that.
You get nervous when Jimmy's there?
Yeah, but it's also, you know, when you have a relationship with somebody. Yeah, I mean, granted, we've had a lot of people come to the shows who are well known, but that's a different level.
Right.
And thankfully, he, you know, has loved what he's seen, and there's a real mutual respect, and great going to lunch or going out for tea or hanging out.
Have you been playing guitar over the last year?
Good question. Not much. I think I needed to separate myself. I think I need to have a purpose in doing it. I spent so much time playing the guitar that I have two guitars in my bedroom, and I rarely have picked them up. But I'll pick it up and go, oh yeah, I can. That's I Want You, or that's Making Love. I haven't played much.
Do you have any desire to do another Paul Stanley album, more of a rock album?
I love the first album. You know, that's a great.
It's a classic.
Yeah,
it's the
that's
best
a great.
of the four.
Yeah, that's a great kind of like musical diary of my life at that point. Live to Win was really me kind of going, let me do something unexpected. Let me do something that
A little more
isn't-
modern, maybe.
Yeah, and you know, I listened to it, and most of it, I go, you know, it's the band on tour was fantastic, and that made it all worthwhile. But if I was to do another album, it would definitely have a guitar around my neck. That's how it started, and so yeah, I would do that.
Have you thought about it?
I have,
Yeah.
I have.
I know that before when we've chatted, you're like, well, people might not want to hear new songs or whatever. I think people would love to hear a Paul Stanley rock album.
I think people would, in their own way, although not on the same level in terms of success, I think people would be more interested in hearing a Paul Stanley album than another Kiss album.
I agree. I agree with that.
And we certainly saw that firsthand. You know, the classic Kiss albums are so ingrained in certain time periods in people's lives that nothing that we could ever do could compete with that, no matter how good it is. So yeah, if I were to do something, I think people would be interested and would enjoy it.
I think along those lines, it was great. You guys played Say Yeah on the whole End of the Road tour. I know a lot of people were like, well, not a lot of people, some, you know, the typical fans, hey, you should be playing Making Love. But it's like, if you don't play Say Yeah or Delilah or something, you're basically saying those last two records you did aren't worth playing anything live. But Say Yeah, if had it come out, you know, in the 70s, all those people that wanted to hear that song would be like, yeah, we love this song.
Hey, if Modern Day Delilah or Hell or Hallelujah had been on one of those earlier albums, they'd be classics. But their disadvantage is that they weren't there. And people don't remember hearing that when they were fighting with the other kids at school, you know, about loving the band or their first date or whatever. Things have significance that goes beyond the music. And there's no way to replicate that. I mean, I don't care who the band is, and any of the bands we've spoken about, of course, apart from Zeppelin, but any band that went in and did an album at this point, nobody wants to hear that stuff live. I mean, when you go to see the Stones, do you really want to hear, oh, you want to hear Brown Sugar, you want to hear Satisfaction, Get Off My Cloud, you know, you pick those songs, but it's not the great tracks from, you know, the last 4 or 5 albums. So that's how I feel.
You mentioned you were doing some stuff for Address to Kill 50 anniversary. We're getting to that point now where we're getting to the 50 anniversaries, which is, you're shaking your head. You can't believe it.
No.
Is it hard? Yeah.
Yes. It's all hard. You know, it's, I say to my kids all the time, isn't it insane that I'm 73? I mean, it
really is.
It's not possible. You know, it's not, it's really, so yeah, when you text me or whatever, you know, this album is like 45 years or 50 years. And it's like, it almost becomes, I say my birthday's become a cruel joke, you know? So yeah, it's 50 years ago. I go, 50 years ago, I was an adult. You know, I was an adult getting into trouble and touring.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very interesting to look back on them and have them that far in the distance.
But you do like a re-release 50 anniversary box set or whatever it may be. Is that a plan to do that for all of the records?
Honestly, Universal decides what they want to do. We have no say. We certainly do what we can to help out if they want some help. But whatever they want to do at this point is really up to them, and has been for quite a while. You know, you can get the greatest hits that starts with Love Gun, or you can get the greatest hits that starts with, you know, with the blue cover or the green cover.
Yeah. Did you sell the catalog to Universal? Is that why they have the say?
No, in terms of the recordings, they own the recordings.
Gotcha. When you think about Dress to Kill, it just popped in my head that of course, the classic cover where you're on the streets. And do you remember that day?
Very much. We were shooting for this Cream magazine pseudo comic book with a storyline in it where we change into Kiss like Clark Kent changes into Superman. and we were shooting, and I think we just decided to do a shoot in front of that lamppost that on 14th, was it? No, it was 23rd Street.
Mm.
Yeah, and you're out there, and people are just walking around like they do in New York, like we're just four everyday guys, And the only one who owned a suit was Peter.
Yeah.
They were all Bill Aucoin suits, and I was wearing my dad's shoes, so I'm up on my toes trying to be as tall as Gene had Ace's clogs on, and yeah, I mean, I remember that well. I think in life, if something's not something you remember, it probably isn't worth remembering. I remember a whole lot.
I always think about this. I mention it all the time to fellow Kiss fans. Now Kiss, here we are, legendary. You could put your makeup on and walk down Sunset Boulevard and people would be going crazy. The balls you guys must have had in 1973, 74 to walk around like that. I'm sure people were howling at you like these idiots or these guys are gay or whatever it may be. Like that took a lot of guts for you guys to even emerge that way.
We were fearless, beyond fearless. Me and Gene and Peter and Ace, for any differences we had, and there were so many, but that was part of the combustibility of the band. For any of that, we were united in Kiss, and nothing was going to stop us. And when we walked down the street or when we played a club and we'd walk out on stage and people would laugh, we were there so that they wouldn't be laughing at the end of the show. So yeah, we were totally committed to what we were doing. And, sometimes I'll see video from early on of us playing, and is it virtuoso playing? Far from it. But the ferocity and the commitment to what we were doing was palpable. I mean, if you look at Peter playing the drums, it was manic. I mean, it was just ferocious. And again, I'm not talking about necessarily chops compared to some other people, but he was committed to live or die on the drums.
Was it hard to get gigs in those early days because of your whole show and the persona?
In the very beginning, it was hard because, in the very beginning when we were a local band in New York, you couldn't play a club if you weren't playing top 40, if you weren't playing the hits. We didn't play the hits.
Right.
So we had to find ways to get our name out there and play while we're playing Strutter and 100,000 Years and Deuce. So that's why we started putting on our own shows, dances, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, it's just funny to think that in the beginning, even like at the Daisy or Coventry, we were playing the lion's share of what we were playing was the first and second album.
Is the Coventry still there?
No, it's gone.
What's there?
I don't know. Coventry, I think at one point became like a Polish Legionnaires Hall or something like that.
I was thinking it'd be great after the MSG show if you guys just drove down to whatever the Coventry is now. Somebody's living room.
Yeah, not Coventry anymore.
What I meant when I said about gigs is when you start getting national and you have your first couple albums and you're going out on tour across the country, I'm sure a lot of bands are like, screw these guys. They can't.
Oh, yeah. They would say, screw those guys until we played.
Right.
And
but how can you follow Kiss, though, is what I mean.
Well, yes, exactly. And after that, people in other bands would be very friendly to us. But initially, yeah, I mean, without naming names, there were bands that I can remember were walking to the stage, the first show with a band, they'd be howling, But that's great, those are the times you do that, being committed to something and saying, one of these days, I'll look back at this as the good old days. And we're in this to win it. And whether it was other bands or people in the audience, it was always a battle.
There's a book that I read a few years ago that came out. It was dealing with Kiss, Aerosmith, Cheap Trick, and Stars. How all four of you kind of came out at the same time, all had some steam, and mentioned some of the early Aerosmith Kiss issues with the road crew and knives are being taken out and all that sort of thing. Did it get that heated between some of the guys sometimes?
Our crew was very committed to us, and our crew believed in what we were doing, and they really were. They were part of the, I was going to say, army. They were not going to let anyone sabotage us doing what we do, and that sometimes came down to, somebody not wanting you to play as loud or turning off the lights, and our crew didn't appreciate that, and they dealt with it perhaps differently than people deal with that kind of stuff today. But
right,
it was great. It was great to have people who cared that much, and it wasn't frivolous. It was because somebody was being unfair. If somebody can go into the ring with you and you have to fight them with one hand tied behind your back, they're not a champ. I always believed, go out there and do your absolute best.
Right.
And then we have to go out and rise above it. But the idea of having somebody handicap you it's unfair. And certainly anybody who played with us would tell you we never did anything like that. If anything, we helped other bands.
Was there ever any bands over the years through the 80s, 90s, 70s that challenged you guys where you went, these guys are good?
Yeah, but it was so long ago. I mean, there were some shows, and this is ages ago, there were some shows where Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band were on fire. Now, is it anything like what we do? No, but it was going over really, really well. Uriah Heep was a great, great band. Interestingly, people talk about Deep Purple and so on. Uriah Heep was just a fantastic band. And they had some nights where, you're getting made up and you're doing your thing and getting dressed and you're going, whoa, we better go out there and kick some ass.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's the way it's supposed to be. Go out there and do your best. Be everything you can be. And if I deserve it, I'll rise above it.
I read Geddy's book last year, and he was very complimentary towards Kiss, and that's kind of a great, early mid '70s the Kiss opening for Rush.
Yeah, Rush opening for Kiss.
Oh, Rush opening for Kiss. Oh, I thought it was the other way around.
Oh gosh, no.
Oh, okay.
We took them on their first tours.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Yeah. I could show you a photo of. We took them under our wing, so to speak, and they were great. We actually had shows when John Rutsey was still the drummer.
Oh, wow.
And then when Neil joined. And they're great guys. And we had a ball. I mean, we just had so much fun together.
Let's talk about when we get into the 80s. I was watching the other day with J.J. Jackson, the reveal of Kiss before Lick It Up with no makeup. Now, we know the reasons why you guys did that, but still, here you are, first time. And I've used it as an example for my career many times, just reinventing. Wow, we still want this. We are going full forward. I guess it's like Kiss without the makeup. Everybody knew this was a new band. It wasn't a new costume or this is a new whole vibe. Took a lot of guts to do that.
Well, we were smart enough. Yeah, it's really interesting because people think it was just done. It was done pragmatically. It was done because we weren't doing well and people weren't relating to us the way they once did. They weren't buying the albums, and maybe to some extent rightfully so. And when we did Creatures and that didn't take off, I had wanted to do that album without makeup because I really felt people had reached a point where they were listening with their eyes and didn't like what they were seeing. So Creatures came out and really didn't do what it should have. And at that point, Gene went along with it. And understandably, he was the most reluctant to do it because, I mean, let's face it, in terms of persona, if I think of Kiss, I think of Gene's face.
Sure. The demon.
Yeah, he hit it out of the park with that one. So he finally went along with it and we took it off, not because we were brilliant, but we were savvy enough to know that what we were doing wasn't working. And that's a time to either reinvent yourself or find something else to do. So when we did Lick It Up without makeup, all of a sudden we sold 4 times what we sold on Creatures. And I don't think that album is anywhere near as good as Creatures. So, yeah, and doing the taking the makeup off on MTV, well, it wasn't even, I mean, it wasn't Kiss as you knew it. There was no Peter, there was no Ace. Basically, you were seeing me and Gene
You're right.
out of makeup because, and not to take anything away from Eric, but we had reached a point where we weren't the known commodity we once were. So, yeah, we it was do or die. It's like everything else we've ever done. It's just do or die. It's either going to work or not. And if at that point nobody was buying our music, it just meant that we sucked. You know, if we can't exist without the makeup, then we don't deserve to exist.
I remember when I looked up album cover, I was just starting to get into Kiss, and I thought that Vinnie Vincent was Ace because he had the same kind of hair. I don't know if it was a wig or whatever it was, but it was like, oh, it looked kind of the same. Did you show up at any shows early on where there'd be posters of Kiss in makeup?
Totally.
Like,
you know, it's the first show we did was in Portugal, and it was very very strange to look across the stage and see Gene the same way he was during sound check virtually. And yeah, the posters had us in makeup. So I think when we first hit the stage, people were confused to say the
opening
least.
band.
Yeah, what's going on? So yeah, it wasn't easy. We just had to do it. And could we compete with what we were with makeup? Of course not. But people didn't want that anymore. They needed a break from it, and maybe we needed a reset. So that when we did it again, it made sense.
But you jumped in, like we mentioned, Gene with the demon persona, and obviously a little bit of a weird situation for him. But the Star Child is the rock star of the band, so you're pretty much the same guy. Just took the star off your face, and it's still Paul Stanley.
Right. I think, yeah, I had no qualms about taking it off because did I create a persona? Yeah. But the persona was a lot of me. So yeah, taking it off was, I'm still going to do the same stuff that people either love or hate.
We sure, talking about quarantine earlier, we've done shows before. Like they have, as you know, they have these giant Kiss concerts. There's one called Kiss Cancer Goodbye, and everyone shows up. And as a matter of fact, this year they did The Elder in its entirety live with Todd Kearns and Casada and those guys. Not bad. It worked out all right. Each Paul's like, okay. But what I was going to say is that you see these songs and see how they translate live, and the people love, a lot of that era of a lot of the stuff that you didn't play live from this time frame. It all works.
Let's put that in perspective. Diehard fans love it. People, no. If people loved it, it would have sold, So yes, it has a certain connection to the most diehard and rabid fans. But as far as the general public, they wouldn't know those songs.
Sure.
So it's wonderful that people out there, anyone would want to do those songs. That's great. It does have a built-in and limited audience.
But you jumped right in, though, with the songwriting. We mentioned Diane Warren prior, obviously Desmond Child. Every song that you guys released in the 80s was with Desmond. What great chemistry you had with him.
I love Desmond. Desmond's first hit was I Was Made for Loving You.
Right.
And, he had the best band in New York City, I thought. Him, Desmond Child, and Rouge, just a killer band. And he has all the success he deserves. He's written with or for a lot of people, and deservedly so.
But that kept Kiss...
Totally. We weren't leading the parade at that point. We were in it. But no doubt about it. We were in survival mode. We weren't breaking ground,
Hmm.
breaking wind. Um, we weren't innovators
Hmm.
at that point. We were just trying to survive with the idea that at some point things will make sense. But what we were doing didn't work and needed to change.
We talked about earlier. I mentioned Quarantine doing "Turn on the Night" and saying it should have been so much of a big. If Bon Jovi did "Turn on the Night,"
Mm-hmm.
it probably would have went to number
Sure.
one. But you guys were behind the eight ball just because you were Kiss.
Yeah. When you have a record company that barely tolerates you and wishes you would go away and are virtually up the butts of a lot of bands who never became anything. And, radio field people who aren't the age of my boots back then. you know, we were not welcomed or championed, and there was a lot of music that should have done so much better. I mean, they couldn't stop forever. I mean,
Yeah.
that took off. But Every Time I Look at You should have been a much bigger song. And yeah, there were a lot of songs that had one of the more loved bands at the record label or elsewhere done, well, they would have done much better. That's life.
I was going to mention when I was talking about the Kiss Cancer Goes By, I got sidetracked, but we do a lot of our show based on the Animalized Uncensored concert. As you know, I've told you before, I've seen it 9,000 times. I don't know if you've ever watched it back, but your raps in between the songs are all-time classics. You got to be careful saying them nowadays, going into the nurse's office and Jean's little baby. Do you ever look back at that stuff, or was that just kind of the norm of what guys were doing?
I don't look back at it.
Yeah.
It was all stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of the stuff with lasers and in the audience, and
Hey, schmuck.
yeah,
But that's rightfully so. I mean, I'm a front man of a band. Somebody's shining something in your face, like, dude, stop.
yeah. I wanted to command the audience. I wanted to bring them in. I wanted to be an evangelical preacher. I wanted to be so much more than just the singer.
Mhm.
And yeah, did it pretty well.
I mean, here's a guy. We're sitting here. You're obviously kind of a soft-spoken guy, and we're talking. But there is literally on YouTube 20-minute clips of just Paul Stanley stage raps. I mean, you're at that point where people are listening to this.
Well, it's damn good.
Yeah.
And the difference between me sitting here is that I'm talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
If I speak to 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 people, well, my logic tells me I should be 20,000, 50,000, or 100,000 times bigger.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you grab people. You want the person in the last row to feel that you're talking to them and
Right.
singing to them. So, yeah, it's always been, gee, you're so quiet and this and that. Well, you want me to stand on the table and yell? I mean, yeah, I can do it, but we're different people under different circumstances.
You're at least I always step into a persona when you get on stage.
And you should. And who you are on stage shouldn't be an act.
Mm-hmm.
It should be a refined version of at least a part of you.
Was there anybody that was an influence? You mentioned you wanted to be an evangelical. Am I saying this wrong?
Evangelical.
Evangelical. Thank you, sir. Was there anybody in a rock and roll band that?
Yes. Yeah, I saw Humble Pie.
Steve Marriott.
I grew up in a blessed time where any weekend you could go see for $3 Hendrix with Noel Redding and Mitch Mitchell. You could see Derek and the Dominoes, Led Zeppelin, Humble Pie. You name them. It was every weekend. So I saw Humble Pie with Peter Frampton when he was still in the band, opening for Derek and the Dominoes, and Steve Marriott just blew me away.
Mm-hmm.
He sang every intro to songs, and he would be singing to the people in the balcony, talking to them. And I saw that and went, that's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy who holds the audience between songs.
As we start to wind down, we mentioned the reason why you took the makeup off. Same story, putting it back on again. Was it an obvious thing? Was it a chance you had to take?
I think just speaking for myself, really for me, it was like, who knows how long everyone's going to last. Now, this granted was 95,
Mm-hmm.
but God forbid one of us isn't around anymore. Why don't we go back and revisit this? Why don't we put it back together and see if we've learned anything
Mm-hmm.
and if we can move forward and come back to it maybe smarter.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was really, wow, if not now, when?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did. It felt like, okay, can't roll the dice on the future. Let's do this now and see if we're better for it, and we got Peter and Ace back, decided to do it again.
Were you surprised at how huge the reaction was?
Yes. Yeah. The only person who knew that was going to happen was Doc.
Doc McGee.
know,
But why did he know that and you
I
didn't
don't-
feel it?
Because he's Doc McGee.
Gotcha.
I certainly was thinking, yeah, we'll go and do a couple of theaters and feel this out. He goes, no, we're going to open in Tiger Stadium.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, what? He knew better than us. He knew better than us, and it was magical. It was. I'm glad we did it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we did it because it led to everything that came after.
Sure.
So yeah, I was very, very happy we did it. I don't like living in what ifs
Mm-hmm.
and maybes and could haves and would haves. So it was a good place to go, and it kind of led us to the same, dark alley, and so we had to keep moving. But once we put the makeup on, it became very clear to us that disbanding just because we don't want to do this anymore, we're far beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And since we've reestablished the 4 personas, characters, well, we don't want to give that up.
Mm-hmm.
We worked too hard building it, mothering it, taking care of it, to suddenly throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, it was like, well, let's keep going. And Michael Keaton was a great Batman. So was George Clooney.
Mm-hmm.
Val Kilmer was pretty, So yeah, it became Kiss is bigger than, and always should be and should have been, Kiss is bigger than the individuals.
Last few things. I'm not just saying this because you're one of the greatest frontmen and rock and roll singers of all time, dude. What the hell were you doing in the 80s? That your vocals are so high and clear, and you say it quite a few times, but I just want to get it documented. You said that was effortless. If you're talking about My Way or something along
Totally.
the.
I could do that. I did it all day. I mean, I would go in the studio and sing My Way or Hell to Hold You for hours. And just because I wanted something, once I discovered technique,
Mm-hmm.
rather than being taught it, once I found my way there, it became effortless in a way that I abused it.
Yeah.
It became, why not? It became, gee, let's see how high I can sing. So yeah, I listen to some of that stuff now, and I go, Jesus, that's, But then I'll listen to Kiss Unplugged. I'll listen to I Still Love You, and go,
Unbelievable.
that's pretty good,
Yeah.
And that makes sense because there's dynamics in it.
Mhm.
Just to go out there and squeal,
Sure.
is it's pretty amazing, but is it really necessary? And does it sell the song to
Mhm.
its best? I Still Love You, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that was effortless. Breath control and pitch. That's not something most people keep forever.
Mm-hmm.
No, am I the singer I once was? Of course not.
Mhm.
Is any athlete what they once
Of course not.
were? No. That's something you come to grips with and either alter how you sing or you drop songs or drop keys.
That's it.
I remember one of my friends, a big singer, saying, if we drop this key any further, it'll be on cellos. It's like, so somebody said to me, and I loved it, a guitar player in another band. I was saying, yeah, I'm not singing like, I did, I'm trying to do this, but I can't quite do what I did. And he goes, you have nothing to prove.
Mm-hmm.
You did it.
Yeah.
And you have to reach that point.
Yeah. As
a musician or an athlete or a wrestler, whatever, you go, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I listen to some of that stuff and I go, wow. And all I can go is, yeah, I did it.
Mm-hmm. Would you ever do what Gene's doing, go out with a band like you did in 2007, 8?
Mm-mm. No. I could go out and play my songs, mm-hmm. but to do Kiss songs, purely Kiss songs or mostly, that I wouldn't want to do. I don't want somebody to be Gene.
Mm-hmm.
Gene is the best Gene I know, and no, the idea of I'm going to get, Bob Schwartz to come out and sing God of Thunder, it's like, so to each his own. But I know Gene is varying some of the songs in his set list, but that doesn't really, doing that doesn't appeal to me. Doing a couple of shows in LA and stuff like that, sure. So
there's a chance you would do something like that. That's great.
Yeah, but the idea of like running around the country or
no,
not appealing.
So we got the Avatars in 27.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned Dress to Kill, 50th anniversary box set, whatever it's going to be. Anything else in the pipeline for Kiss? I'm sure there's a dozen things, but anything else that you want to?
There's always stuff. I'm just not the person to say, well, we're doing this and then it doesn't happen.
Right.
There's always stuff in the pipeline. If I tell you about the Kiss Vegas thing, 2027, it's in Vegas. If I tell you about something else and it doesn't happen, I'd rather, how can I put it? The truth is good enough, or at least what I know to be the facts are good enough.
Mm-hmm. Last question for you. What's the thing you're most proud about Kiss, and what's the thing you miss most about being on tour with Kiss?
The thing I miss most is the audience, that appreciation that works both ways. The word is reciprocity. That mutual kind of love that I felt with an audience. There's nothing that can take the place of that.
Mm-hmm.
The gratitude and joy and commitment that goes back and forth, nothing can take the place of that. So do I miss that? Yeah, but I don't yearn for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
If you yearn for something, you're probably not happy with what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But do I miss it? Of course. How could you not miss it? There's nothing that's ever going to be that good.
Mm-hmm. And what about the most proud that you are of Kiss? The legacy of Kiss?
50 years.
50 years of doing what you love.
50 years of doing what I love against all odds and regardless of what anyone ever thought, good or bad, doing what I wanted to do. Not always loved, not always successful, but no apologies.
It's great talking to you, man. 5
Always.
Times. Next time I will bring the green jacket.
Yeah, bring the green jacket.
Thanks, man.
Hey, of course.
Listen, I want to tell you, you've been a dynamite audience, and you deserve to give yourselves a round of applause. Let's go.